It's always interesting when Daniel Jeremiah drops his first mock draft. And so now that it's happened, let's break it down today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league. I'm a Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Joe, third show, third Wi-Fi connection, third background. We'll see how things go today. Happy first day of Senior Bowl practices day to you from Mobile.
I think this is a historic occasion on the podcast where this is 3 consecutive shows that you have been part of from 3 different states, right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, how has that ever happened?
Has there been any trips?
I don't think it's happened.
Like, do you remember when we went to Vegas for Shrine? Or did you?
Yeah, I was there with you for that.
You went that year?
Yeah.
Right, because how long did it take us to check in?
Oh, it was a while there at the Luxor. Boy.
8 hours to check in at the Luxor.
You don't realize how many people bring their dog, you know? That's the big takeaway.
So
people are bringing their dogs and kids to Vegas. That's the one thing that stood out to me about that 3-hour wait in line.
That's about the only other time I can remember us having remotely close to a similar turnaround where, like, we might have did a Friday at home. No, because then, like, the weekend happened.
Yeah, I don't think it's happened.
So I don't think it's happened either. So this is what, year 9 of the program in some variation?
Yeah. It's funny. I stumbled upon our 2017 Senior Bowl videos that we did on the field with FanRag. I was listening to you and I were talking about Ethan Pochik and Alex Anzalone, and I'm like, boy.
Yeah.
It was before I had a lot more hair. A lot more hair.
Josh Reynolds, OJ Howard.
Who's it? Ryan Switzer?
Forrest Lamp.
Oh man. Yeah. Those were the days.
The glory days. Well, we'll see what we can do to replicate them here. And it's always a glory day when Daniel Jeremiah drops a mock draft, which he did over the weekend. And this was the feedback that I had. Because the mock obviously dropped, and there's some different names in some different spots, and everybody freaks out. If you do this long enough, you realize, like, Daniel Jeremiah's first mock draft is an amazing litmus test of where the outside world is on the draft class versus where the inside world is on the draft class, because his hit rate for things that are off the beaten path that end up becoming like factual things is as high as anybody that does this. So the fact that DJ dropped the mock, it didn't disappoint because there were things in different places than what you expected to see. I think is an excellent reminder that, hey, like, we got to get caught up to where the league's at on a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Well, it's the intrigue starts at the very beginning where you have the first 2 picks and neither one of those picks is a quarterback. On the heels of new GM in Tennessee, or I guess their football operations, Chad Brinkery, so the team wouldn't pass on a generational talent. With the first pick, he's got him going Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State. Tennessee with their quarterback need, not going with a quarterback. I mean, you could talk me into a lot of different outcomes at the top of this draft. He has it going Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and then Cam Ward, the first quarterback off the board to the Giants. But there's a big piece of me that, despite me believing that there is a world where those first 2 teams don't pick quarterbacks, it's hard for me to not envision some team getting into those one of those spots to get a quarterback, especially given the need that exists at the top of this draft.
Right. I think the team out of those two, if you told me that Tennessee stuck and picked because they were over the moon in love and they didn't want to go down too far and miss a player like an Abdul Carter, would totally get it. But a team like Cleveland, with what their cash spend has been, their opportunity potentially drop out and still get a really good player in a class that doesn't have a lot of great players in it to still be in position to get one and get more draft picks and kind of bring that, get off this ride that you're on that feels like it's starting to get up into New Orleans Saints territory. And you really don't want to be there, right?
Right.
You're seeing it's January 28th and the Saints haven't filled their head coaching vacancy because it's just not an attractive spot to go be right now.
Yeah.
So the Browns, if they decide not to take a quarterback because they get Kirk Cousins or whatever, they probably should be hoping that somebody comes knocking for a quarterback.
Yeah, I feel like the Browns are that team. It just, the Cousins thing just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But so what's interesting to me about the quarterbacks, though, is it feels like, and I'm not sure what's driving this, it feels like Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback, is kind of the hotter name. While, however you get there, I feel like I'm looking at more and more mock drafts that has Shedeur Sanders somehow getting to the Raiders at 6. And maybe people are not quite ready to project trades and all that type of stuff. But the marriage of Shedeur to Vegas and then Cam Ward being like, okay, is he going to go 1, 2, or 3 somewhere in there? That's kind of the trend that I'm feeling right now.
That's kind of where the consensus falls, and DJ just being the first one to happen to say, hey, courtesy of Chad Brinker giving us this ammunition to say we're not going to draft a quarterback just because we're sitting at 1. Let's use that excuse to put that in a mock draft and see what it looks like. And that's where I think the shock value of it popped up.
If I can for just a second here, because mock drafts are going to be a big part of the next several months in not only this show, but of the football community. And what I can appreciate about mock drafts, and I hope other people can, is that you're simply presenting scenarios, right? You're kind of marrying fits and then you're presenting scenarios. And as you get new pieces of information, like the Titans making that comment, it opens up the opportunity to say, okay, if that's what this means, this is what this could look like. So the obsession over like mock draft accuracy, especially in January and February, I think we have to be able to, just please, I beg people to just accept it for what it is. It's a thought exercise based on possibilities, and it's fun.
And remember, you don't get to the draft, and every team does what's expected or most logical.
Right.
And not everybody gets good grades, and sometimes the teams that pick players that get bad grades end up being the best fits, right? So, there is just such an unknown element of it, and that would include Chicago drafting Tyler Booker.
Oh, that was the question I wanted to ask you about. I see this name, this Tyler Booker, guard Alabama, high in these mock drafts. He goes top 10 here. What do I need to know about this guy?
But you want to do him?
Well, yeah, I want to do him, but just like a real quick, your thought about this is ascension, whatever it is about Tyler Booker that's going high here.
The highest rated natural guard in the class. He is a powerful, dense. He's built like Steve Avila or Jonah Jackson, to paint the kind of picture of what kind of build he has. So you have that guy at Alabama. And he's got excellent displacement. He's functional athleticism. He's I would argue, above average to good. But when you factor in the size element, I think that's what makes him like a great athlete when you size adjust your expectations for what kind of movement skills a guy's supposed to have. Well,
and it almost feels like you think about this player and then the deals that are coming through at guard, what Robert Hunt got, what Chris Lindstrom got, what Landon Dickerson got, what Sam Cosmi, Quinn Minor. These guys are getting 18 plus, man. Yeah. So mock them in the top 10, baby. Right.
I'd still be surprised with that though.
Yeah.
just because now you're getting into a stratosphere where I guess from like a fifth-year option perspective, they bucket all the offensive linemen in together, so it doesn't make that big of a difference. But it's on a rookie wage scale, and it's a top 10 pick. Like there's really good starting guards out there, even with this explosion at the top of the market, that are going to be making less year one than what Tyler Booker is if he gets drafted in that spot.
All right, we'll keep the conversation moving, looking at the middle of this mock draft here in just a moment, folks. Be sure to stick with us. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Trevor Sikkema and I joked about this in the car on the way to practice in Dallas, that anybody who's buying in on Armand Membu is a part of the men movement.
Yeah,
we said we wanted to do like t-shirt and print the shirts and the men movement. DJ's on the men movement because he put Membu 11 to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, you had him going, 13 to Miami, and I know you just put one out.
I put one, the week before, so 9 days ago now, the one I had Membu at 13.
Wow. Quite the mem movement. Did I get that correct?
Are you a part of the mem movement?
I don't know if I am or not. I think he's probably a top 20 pick.
All right, then you've joined the mem movement. Welcome.
All right. So this is like O-line city here, right? 10, yes. 11, 13. Nice little run on offensive line and some corners here in this chunk. You feel like this is where the value is?
There, I'm surprised it stops there. Where you look, your next offensive lineman after that is 26.
Yeah, Connerly and I freaking love him.
Yeah.
Checking it. We have 34-inch arms, right?
Yes. So this will be a big week for Connerly. I know I talked to somebody around the Oregon program, and they said, see how he does handling power this week. If he handles power well this week, then giddy up.
Yeah.
He's going to be in the we'll have to come up with a t-shirt idea for him as well. But yeah, and I remember some of this is watered down a little bit because Will Campbell went at 4 in this mock, right? Mm-hmm. But it felt like once you got outside the top 10, that's where there was an intersection of, I think these guys are clear first-round grades. I think these guys, all these teams need this spot on their roster. So I do think somewhere between 10 and I think Arizona and Cincinnati and Seattle and those are all offensive line hungry, needy teams too. So it's just a question of if you get the early picks that come off the board. But if you told me you had half of 10 through 20 as offensive linemen, I wouldn't be surprised.
We got to get your reaction to Miami's pick here at number 13. They go Calvin Banks Jr., offensive lineman from Texas. So your thoughts on that, but then also, of course, you get a chance to look at the other players that they could have picked. Is there a path you would have preferred?
I like Banks. I don't love Banks. I do think he's a good fit for this style of offense, but he's going to play inside at guard, presumably. Because they'll look for their best combination of 5, and assuming they don't have Tron Armstead back this year, then be Patrick Paul at one tackle spot, Austin Jackson the other. Banks would play at guard next to Paul. And you could do some really exciting displacement stuff if you decide you want to have a more diversified run game, which I think they desperately need. So I get that, and I think some of his pass rush stuff gets mitigated if you play him inside a guard. So it's okay. It would not be the offensive lineman that I would pick Connerly if I could pick one of those two guys. And then you get into Will Johnson. I think CB2's a big need for Miami when it's Kendall Fuller and a contract year and was on IR twice last year.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell me Will Johnson or Jalen Walker, those guys are in those stratosphere. Depending on what they do in free agency, I might advocate to go one of those different directions instead.
Yeah, it feels like some really good value in Johnson and Walker. That's one of my favorite picks here in this mock is at number 16, Arizona, getting Jalen Walker. I just feel like that type of skill set is useful for Jonathan Gannon based on how he's deployed other players in the past. And they need some impact in that front seven. And Walker, I like the upside as a pass rusher, but I also really like the run defense if you want to play him. I mean, you really want to do a hybrid thing and have him play some stack linebacker. The way he plays downhill and fits the run, I think is pretty freaking special. So that'd be quite the jolt to that front seven.
Speaking of jolts to front seven, how diabolical is Kenneth Grant to the Seahawks?
Right. Boy,
Leonard
that'd be
Williams,
quite the collection.
Byron Murphy.
Jeez.
And now Kenneth Grant.
Yeah. Okay.
Good
luck.
That line's going to look a lot like Baltimore's before you know it, right?
Right. Come on, Rams. You want to run inside zone against us, baby? We got it. We got the answers, right? 49ers, You want to run inside zone against us? Bijan, or he's not in that division. Who's the other team in there? The Cardinals. Okay. Well,
James
they
Conner.
like to run the ball too.
Yep. They like to run between the tackles. And Nick Eamon to Denver, big surprise. And there's been some people in the space that have really been champions for Eamon as a player. He's like 6'2", 225, 230, monster size safety. And here's everything you need to know about like the athletic profile. He won an angle in the open field and ran down Jalen Milroe from behind. So he can fly. Big time tackler, big time striker. Obviously, adding that to what Denver has on defense is a pretty scary proposition. DJ went as far as to invoke the name Derwin James in the synopsis. This is probably about as far as up as I could see him going, but I would not be surprised if he ends up being a riser just because he can run lightning fast. He is super explosive, and he made a big leap in ball production this year. So he found the ball in zone coverage more and underneath zones.
So he goes in this mock ahead of – he's the first safety, right? This is the first safety off the board.
Yeah.
You have to get that tape quick here, Kyle Krabs. On this guy. I know you're not late to the party, but I'm late on all the parties pretty much. So
what I was going to look up where I have him on my board, but I don't want to do the thing where I open up another tab and
can't do it.
Tempt the internet connection to go to hell on us here. Maybe on break I'll tell you where I have even more. I know I have an early 2 on him as a grade. So like I wasn't overly surprised to see him sneak in here. Just 20 and safety 1 is obviously very high.
Speaking of break and what we want to get to next, I think there is just incredible value in players that I've studied that are going here in picks 20 to 32 that I think are just absolute gems of draft picks. We'll talk about that and more on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. You can post your job, and look, LinkedIn's new feature can also help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to get those qualified candidates. There's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
41st. I had him 41st. Joe, people say it's a bad draft. People say it's a bad draft with these players. With
I
these
feel
players
like you're,
going in,
you're talking to me a little bit on that because I've been critical of it, and I certainly haven't done the work. But it's like the top of this draft is just different, right?
Yeah,
that's where I keep coming back to it.
But and I wasn't talking to you, but because I know you've liked a number of the players that we worked through
as we get to them. Yeah,
you just got done teasing the guys going in the 20s. And I agree with you. There's some excellent fits and really good football players going in this stratosphere. You just don't have – you have some dead spaces at the top, and you don't have a quarterback class that you love.
Yeah. But I could get Matthew Golden at 21. Receiver out of Texas. We did a show on him last week for the Steelers. I mean, I think they've got to find some answers at wide receiver. For a number of reasons, even if George Pickens became a mature version of what he can be, like they still need help there.
Yeah.
So I'm not counting on that. In fact, I think Pickens is going to be a problem for them and is a problem for them. But like, what a pick that is. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but like Shamar Stewart at 23.
Yeah. Yeah. That one needed to be shouted out because
that's like a top 10 talent.
He landed in the same spot of my mock 9 days ago. And then when I sat down and did it and looked at it and said, okay, who realistically probably needs to be drafted in a different range and stratosphere this time around? When I did my weekly update, Stewart was the first name I had circled, and like he went top 12. So, and for Green Bay too, you see, he weighed in at 281.
Yeah. With all the length you expected him to have too, right? 34 plus, I'm pretty sure.
83 and 5/8 wingspan, I think.
Large.
Monster numbers.
How about, Malachi Starks, you and I both think highly of him. He goes 24 to Minnesota. I mean, aging.
This one scares me a little bit. It scares me because I know he didn't have the year that he was capable of having. And it kind of gives me some worry that this is where the league sits on him. So this was one of the ones where when I'm scrolling and looking, I'm like, oh no. Positional value, all those things, right, that exist. And the versatility is good. The football intelligence is off the charts. But after that, he made the splashy play in week 1, and it was kind of it for like the big time wow plays that you need at that position to justify a team drafting you early, unfortunately. And that's just the dynamics of the position. So him checking in at 20, it's an awesome fit for him. But I do worry that this might be one of those players that ends up falling down the board a little bit predictably off of this.
I love this pick for Washington. I mean, we just did Josh Simmons as well. I think he's got really high upside. I think the thing that obviously limits his projection is the knee injury. But for a team like Washington, I mean, to get a player like that I think is just perfect for that offense and their needs, that feels like a major win for them, having picked so late, having such a premium need, but then like the injury thing, this guy falling in your lap feels like a home run to me.
Yeah, and he obviously has appeal for whether you want him to replace Wiley at right tackle or if you're going to have an opportunity inside where you had Cosme go down with a severe knee injury here late in the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's going to be multiple pathways for him to play. And for Washington specifically, I think that's the worst thing you can do is say, well, we brought in Jalen. We made some investments on the offensive line. We signed Tyler Biadasz. We drafted Brandon Coleman. And I also would not dismiss it. And Coleman was generally good at tackle this year. Like Coleman might make sense to kick inside and play Simmons at left tackle too.
Sure. Yeah. 100%.
I think that them fighting the complacency of, oh, well, we got a couple good names and Jaden's a mobile quarterback, we'll be fine. No, don't do it. Don't do it. So I'm all for a pick like this for them. Need your Bills pick reaction?
I'm good with it. It's Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Daquan Jones didn't quite deliver the season expected after, he really kind of shined in a big way last year. And the Bills, for all the transition that they had on their roster of getting younger and cheaper, the one exception that they made was Daquan Jones, bringing him back. It's like, well, okay, you shouldn't have done that. So not only do I think that's an upgrade opportunity, but you need kind of an answer there. And I think Harmon's versatile. The Bills don't like their nose tackles to be like the 350 pounders, right? They kind of want some movement. They want some penetration skill there. So I think Derek Harmon's appeal to kind of play gap and a half, but also be an up the field type player makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, satisfied is definitely the word I'd settle on there.
And then another defensive tackle who we have not gotten into, but you and I have talked a little bit about in TJ Sanders going to Philadelphia. When you consider Milton Williams is an expiring contract, and it's probably going to get paid a pretty penny because he's turned into a really good football player.
Yeah, so unique.
Yeah. So you don't expect Philly with all the big contracts that they have given. If they wanted to, they'd find the money. They always do. But I would be surprised if they brought back Milton in what I expect his market will look like. Yeah. And it's a whole other show. But like that's one of those ones that I think gets a little scary for free agent spending. And if you're spending for a pass rush player and teams get competitive and they start bidding on each other to take a player like that is a unique player and put him into a different scheme, that's a little scary. And that's nothing against Milton, but that's what are you paying for versus what are you providing the player to be able to replicate what he did in that environment.
That screams the two players that immediately came to mind that are just like that, in my opinion, are Zach Allen and Draymond Jones. Yeah. And both of those guys got paid. As Zach Allen had an unbelievable year for Denver. And I think that kind of works with Vance Joseph, but maybe Draymond Jones hasn't quite been the player that Seattle envisioned him to be. It feels like Milton, just go to Arizona, right? It feels like all right, we know, sure. or I guess stick around, but I mean, obviously Philly's got a very talented and expensive roster, so you can't keep them all. But the opportunities feels like to replenish, what a spot to be. You're going to be picking 31 or 32. You're going to want to replenish some of your D-line talent. I mean, what a year to need that and be picking 31 and feeling like you can get, a really good player like TJ Sanders or other guys that could be available.
I don't think DJ dropped his top 50 yet, but he said he was working on it for this week. He said he had 16 defensive linemen in the top 50.
Let's go.
And that checks out. And then I think you can make a legitimate argument from an offensive line perspective. I'm going to do the thing real quick since we have time. Is Campbell went, and then it was Booker, and then it was Membu, and then it was Banks. Yeah, at that point, we wait till Connerly at 26. And then you have Josh Simmons at 29. Did I forget anybody in the first round?
I don't think so.
And we did get to Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, who played tackle and magically became a better player at tackle over the final 4 games of the college football playoff stretch than what he was at guard, I think.
Paris Johnson, same thing. Better tackle than he is guard, man.
Yeah. Arizona's Savania, I think some people think is in this stratosphere. I'm a little bit lower on him, but if you told me that you had him in the top 50, I'd understand why you did. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, I think has fringe top, although his weigh-in wasn't quite what we expected. Shorter arms and 305, so he might be a center. But I think he'd be a good center. So if you told me the half of your top 50 was offensive and defensive linemen, I would not bat an eye.
That's a good spot to be.
It's a good class.
Yeah.
Just not in the ways that you're used to it being that help your fantasy football team.
Oh, shucks.
Oh, dear. And hey, we kind of glossed over this one. What do you think of Tyler Warren at 7 of the Jets?
Boy, this feels like I like Tyler Warren a lot. I think he's a really good football player, but this feels very much like Brock Bowers searching. Yeah, it really does. And the Jets, I mean, just massive issues across that roster. And maybe look, the Raiders, you say the same thing, right? Massive issues. They get this impact tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, if I'm the Jets, I'd much rather get a defensive tackle. You might lose DJ Reed. You might need a corner. And I mean, you're going to run this. Hey, Aaron Glenn's coming to town. You're running man coverage, baby.
Will Johnson feels like he'd be a home run there.
Right.
If you don't bring back DJ Reed.
Yeah. So those, I would probably want either a corner or a defensive tackle, which is certainly worthy options at both positions. In addition to maybe you got to look at offensive tackle as well. So that moves me off the tight end thing. But I think the story here is the Brock Bowers influence in getting to a spot like that.
Yeah. So, well, there you have it. That's going to do it for us. Daniel Jeremiah's first mock is out. We have Senior Bowl practices starting in about 2 hours. So I got to get dressed here, get out the door, and off we go. And exciting times with a lot of talented football players down here in Mobile. So weigh-ins are out. Maybe we can get into some more of that this week as we lean into, do you want to do prospects tomorrow? Do you want to do Senior Bowl tomorrow?
I think we'd all like to get some impressions from you on the Senior Bowl, man. Boots on the ground, baby. I want to hear it.
So let's plan on that tomorrow. So come back and see us. I'm Kyle Krabs. He's Joe Marino. Enjoy the rest of your day. We're out of here.